Is the third time the charm? No! No! Sorry, that was really high-pitched and obnoxious. I mean, it's less awful in this current moment. Nope, nope, it's climbing. It's climbing. It's doing a gosh dang climb. Let's see how bad it gets when I hop into a game. Oh god, why? Maybe it's the weather. I wonder if it's the weather. Bad weather definitely seems to mess with my internet, which is real frustrating. Why aren't you better? I'm absolutely talking to my stream, not you lovely, beautiful, fabulous people who are here right now. Not you guys. Never you guys. You guys are great and I love you and I just want to hang out with you and play video games. It's just getting worse. Ugh. I was hoping, I was like, maybe when I actually get into the game it'll be better, but... Oh, it actually got better for a hot sec. It's still bad. It's still bad. Oh, God. Always here despite the technical issues. I appreciate that. I love you. I love you so much. Did it get better for... Yeah, I don't know why. It's weird. It's very weird. I think... I don't know how well my audio is coming through. I think I'll call it and try again tomorrow. Hopefully it gets better. Okay, you can hear me. Audio only. Welcome to my ASMR stream where I make sounds of my earrings. Sound of me almost tipping over my entire container of juice. Is this juice? Does this count as juice? It's a cherry pomegranate drink mix. I don't know, but like, oh, water bottle. I should never go and say some more. Unless you want to do an audio focused stream with some visuals. I don't know if I don't think I have anything. I wish I had something on standby. Oh. I could, oh, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like, I could read you guys a story. I don't think I have any stories on standby. And I wouldn't know what to... oh, okay, wait. Random thing that is absolutely nothing related to video games or anything, but you guys can hear me, so you're my captive audience. I have been trying to think. I don't know how geeky you all are. I consider us all nerds, and it's great, and I love us. But I also dabble in the geekdom. I love physics. I'm horrible at it, but I love it. It's very interesting. I read a lot of physics books. I read about a thing in a book. I've read so many I don't remember which one it's in, otherwise I would just go back and be like, yeah, that's the one thing. There's something in physics that I think is really cool. There's something, I don't remember the name of it, and that's what I want to know, is there's something. It's something super, super small. It's like makes up particles. I thought it was a quark, maybe, but when I was like reading up on quarks, I don't think it's a quark. Maybe it's a Higgs. Maybe it's a Higgs particle. Something like that. So super, super, super small, right? They travel around. So at like one moment, it could be like part of you. Like it could make up an atom in your, or a particle, or like something like in your arm. And like the very next fraction of a second, it's like on the other side of the galaxy. What is that? There's a thing. It's a thing. Because I thought it was really cool, because I was like, oh my god, it's like we're all connected. Like, oh, it's so beautiful. I don't remember what it's called, though. So it's something super, super small that, like, makes up the entire fabric of the universe. And they just are, like, constantly, essentially, like, teleporting everywhere. Like, everywhere. And it can be anywhere at any time. And so, like, we all share it. And we share it with, then, you know, the whole universe. And it's just, it's really cool. I don't remember what it is, though. Is it a quark? I don't think it's quarks. When I was, like, going back through them, I was like, I don't think it's quarks. But I could be wrong. But I feel like it's something, like, that small. The teeny tiny babies. I was wondering if it's the Higgs boson. The Higgs boson particle. Maybe... Okay. The Higgs boson, which I could be mispronouncing that, I'm not sure, sometimes called the Higgs particle, is an elementary particle in the standard model of particle physics produced by the quantum excitation of the Higgs field, one of the fields in particle physics theory. Alright, so yes, it's a boson with zero spin, even or positive parity, no electrical charge, and no color charge that couples to or interacts with mass. It's very unstable, decaying into other particles almost immediately upon generation. I remember reading about that, because with the Hadron Collider. Hadron Collider. I know how to say things. At CERN, yeah. But talk about the teleporting. Is this the teleporty guy? Oh my god, it is Mike's username. Oh, Tashians? Is that... Okay. Oh. Wait, how... No, I love IPA, but I wasn't actually taught it. Tachyon? Okay. Or tachyonic particle. Hypothetical particle that always travels faster than light. Physicists believe faster than light particles cannot exist because they are inconsistent with the known laws of physics. Such particles did exist. They could be used to send signals faster than light. I don't think this is it. This doesn't quite sound accurate. Because this is a thing that was proven. So it's not a hypothetical, it's a theorem. A theory is a proved hypothesis. So I guess they know it happens, I think. Exhibit unusual property of increasing in speed as their energy decreases. That's cool. Would require infinite energy to slow to the speed of light. No verifiable experimental evidence for the existence of such particles has been found. This does sound really cool, and I mean, I don't think this is the thing. Because this is more moving. And the thing I was reading about sounded literally just like spontaneous teleportation. Like it just beep, 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 beep. So it's not like it's traveling to that place. It just is in that place. Yeah, the speed increases as the energy decreases. That's really cool. Ooh, neutrinos? Is it a neutrino? Right, hi, we're talking about physics, which is definitely the same thing as Mass Effect. How are you? Oh my gosh. Also, I have to say I love that things are called flavors. It's not like a different type or a category of something. No, it's a different flavor. Like charm and strange. I love that. God, I love physics. It's so cool. I really wish I was better at retaining information, though. Um... Yes, each neutrino has an antiparticle. I just want to do. Who does the do-do-dos? Of course, like, the Wikipedia articles are like these massive chunks of like, here's the history and like the different experimentation that was done to confirm the existence, and I'm like, I just want to know if they teleport. Oscillation? No, because that's the neutrinos just changing flavors. Which I don't think is that. Oh my god. Oh my god, okay. You're getting Mike. I'm great. I'm great. I hope you're all doing well. Physics and Mass Effect go sort of hand in hand. That's literally why I started streaming, because I was just like frustrated and I was like, here's sci-fi, it's relevant. Suck at any of it, but I do love science, so same. Retaining info, it's so hard. It's an ADHD thing for sure. It's so hard. Okay. So, hello. Hi. Maybe you know. So, there's something in physics, something super tiny, like makes up a particle or something that it can be anywhere. It can be anywhere. So it's constantly like every fraction of a second it's somewhere else. So like one moment it can be like make up part of you, and like the other moment be like on the other side of the galaxy. So it's just like beep 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 beep. So like everything, which I thought it was cool because it's like, oh, we're like all connected. So it's like the stuff that's comprising everything, it's constantly changing of like where the thing. So it's like we're all, you know, we're all one. I thought it was really cool. I just don't remember what the super teeny tiny thing that does that is called. Yes, Mass Effect. Absolutely. Which I wish that my stream was steady enough that I could actually play it. But so instead we're talking physics. What is that thing? I love how I move for all of like 3 seconds and then immediately freeze again. God, I don't know what's wrong with my stream. I do think it's weather. But like, it's a thing. This is a thing. I read about it in a book that had been vetted, and there were source materials. There was a works cited page. They talked about experiments that they did to prove it. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Yes. There were examples in there. I just... What is it? Okay, I was wondering if it was quarks. They have some entanglement BS where they can switch places with their pair via quantum entanglement. They are what make up atomic matter. Okay, so maybe it is. That's the level of small you're talking about. It's definitely... So I was thinking quarks, but the Wikipedia article overwhelmed my sad, tiny little brain, so I did not read enough. If it's not quarks, it would be at least quark size. Like, that is how small we're talking. So maybe it is that. Maybe. Got storms up there? I think we do. I don't know if, like, honestly, right now, it's fine outside, but my stream is real garbage, so I feel like there have to be storms happening somewhere around here. Also, some examples of just electron teleportation between large masses of space. Maybe it's electrons? Tachyon particles were also brought up. I don't know if that's the thing. But yeah, I do think it's an elementary particle of some kind. Because when I was reading it, I was like, oh, these are like the real, like really tiny things. But like, I just It's like I'm opening the wiki articles and they're just so full, and I'm just like, I just want the words to appear. This is that teleporty particle thingy. And I'll be like, oh my god, thank you. I don't care about the etymology of lepton. Lepton? However, I'm not sure how you actually say it. Like, good for you. I love etymology. Trust me, I love some etymology. It's not what I'm after right now. I'm so overwhelmed. I think that's more electron, anti-electron exchange than entanglement. Okay. Just a few days ago, we had an intense storm. Then my mom in Ohio called me later on, and a tornado went over her house. Yes, I heard about tornadoes. Sheen, everything's okay. Yeah, my mom said that there were tornadoes, but, and some places got really wrecked, but, no deaths, which is great. But yeah, tornadoes are scary. Really tiny is probably quarks then, since that's about as small as we're proven. Okay. Going back to the quarks page. Wait, where's the quarks page? That's not the quarks page. Bring me my quarks. Ah, you lead to my quarks. Oh my god, there's so much. Oh no. I don't have the brain for this. I need to freaking find... Okay, I know one of the books that I read recently that was physics was the 4% Universe. That was a very fun little book. That was about dark matter, dark energy, and the race to discover the rest of reality. Was it you? Were you the one? Because I wouldn't think it would be dark matter. I don't think. No. I need to just start, like essentially writing reviews of books, like, to just be like, finish reading this book and this was a really cool thing in it. That way I have a thing I can just go to and be like, what was that thing I thought was so cool? Real quick shout out to Garrus as the OG F the Bear Boy. I freaking love Garrus. Oh my god, Mass Effect is so good. I do really want to play. My frames are so bad. I'll try streaming tomorrow. Today is about quarks and tachyons. Electrons. I don't know. Higgs boson. That boson be Higgins, right? Yeah. I don't know. I'm just so... I want to know the answer. I feel like something that someone said has to be the right thing. I'm just not educated enough in this subject. Bosons be Higgin! Yes! See, y'all get it. Y'all freaking get it. I still love just flavor is how they categorize. Oh my god. Oh my god! Rain, thank you for gifting Melon Deity with a sub! That scared everything out of me. Maybe the real knowledge is the friends we made along the way. I love that. I love that. Oh, That's so true. That's very true. I am so grateful that all y'all were immediately just like spitting the physics vocab. That, like, honestly, that makes me really happy. Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to. I have all the wiki articles open, and I will do some reading, off stream. You know what? I don't think I can play, because, like, the frames are dropping too much to try to stream the game, right? Like, this isn't good enough quality. I'm dropping like 60% of my frames. Like, that's bad. So I feel like my visuals, the gameplay is like not gonna cut it. Um, we are nerds here. You guys are, but it makes me very happy. So, since I don't think I can do the game, I am going to continue trying to figure out what this is. Okay, so it's maybe it's quarks. Let's read the Wikipedia page on quarks. I need to pop you guys out then, because if you guys say stuff, I'm not gonna catch it. Or actually, I'll pop out the quark page. Get you all saddled up. A quark is a type of elementary particle and a fundamental constituent of matter. Quarks combine to form composite particles called hadrons, the most stable of which are protons and neutrons, the components of atomic nuclei. All commonly observable matter is composed of up quarks, down quarks, and electrons. Owing to a phenomenon known as color confinement, quarks are never found in isolation. They can be found only within hadrons, which include baryons? Baryons? Some of these words I've never heard of, such as protons and neutrons, and mesons? I'm so sorry. Or in quark-gluon plasmas. For this reason, much of what is known about quarks has been drawn from observations of hadrons. Quarks have various intrinsic properties, including electric charge, mass, color, charge, and spin. They are the only elementary particles in the standard model of particle physics to experience all four fundamental interactions, also known as fundamental forces: electromagnetism, gravitation, strong interaction, and weak interaction, as well as the only known particles whose electric charges are not integer multiples of the elementary charge. There are 6 types known as flavors of quarks: up, down, charm, strange, top, and bottom. Which flavor of quark are you? Up and down quarks have the lowest masses of all quarks. The heavier quarks rapidly change into up and down quarks through a process of particle decay, the transformation from a higher mass state to a lower mass state. Because of this, up and down quarks are generally stable and the most common in the universe, whereas strange, charm, bottom, and top quarks can only be produced in high-energy collisions, such as those involving cosmic rays and in particle accelerators. Like at CERN! For every quark flavor, there's a corresponding type of antiparticle known as an antiquark. That differs from the quark only in that some of its properties, such as the electric charge, have equal magnitude but opposite sign. The quark model was independently proposed by physicists Murray Gell-Mann and George Zweig in 1964. Oh, the amount of butchering Amadou is delightful. Quarks were introduced as parts of an ordering scheme for hadrons, and there was little evidence for their physical existence until deep inelastic scattering experiments at the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center in 1968. Accelerator program experiments have provided evidence for all 6 flavors. The top quark, first observed at Fermilab in 1995, was the last to be discovered. Okay, wait. Deep inelastic scattering. What is this? Oh, is that... Okay, so I remember that one of the experiments talked about in the book, but I don't think this is the teleporty thing. was how, like, they would fire things at other things, and they would have barriers, so there were like kind of little gaps between, and they would fire beam stuff, and they expected, oh, it'll be like more concentrated like through the gaps because like they have to like funnel through. And they looked and they were like, oh no, it kind of goes everywhere. So it's like, oh, it doesn't follow like a straight line. I wonder if that's what this is. Welcome to Weird Science. Okay, so in particle physics, deep inelastic scattering is the name given to a process used to probe the insides of hadrons, particularly barons such as protons and neutrons, using electrons, muons, and neutrinos. It was first attempted in the 1960s and 1970s and provided the first convincing evidence of the reality of quarks, which up until that point had been considered by many to be a purely mathematical phenomenon. It is an extension of Rutherford scattering to much higher energies of the scattering particle and thus to much finer resolution of the components of the nuclei. Henry Wade Kendall, Jeremy Isaac Friedman, and Richard E. Taylor were joint recipients of the Nobel Prize of 1990 for the pioneering investigations concerning deep inelastic scattering of electrons on protons and bound neutrons, which have been of essential importance for the development of the quark model in particle physics. Congrats to all of you guys! Double slit experiment. Hella, yes! Particles behave as waves when not observed. Classic. Yes! Yes! Oh my god, I'm so glad that you know what I'm talking about, because I really only half remember things ever. Like, I don't ever fully... So every time I talk about stuff, I feel like I'm crazy. Okay. So this seems... not the teleporty thing, but very cool. So I'm gonna go back to quarks. Is there a Twitch category of just reading Wikipedia? Classification. The Standard Model is the theoretical framework describing all the known elementary particles. This model contains 6 flavors of quarks, named up, down, strange, charm, bottom, and top. I just want to know how they came up with those names. Some of them, like up and down, I could get. Maybe like bottom and top, I could like maybe understand. Strange and charm. I love it. I'm here for it. Antiparticles of quarks are called antiquarks and are denoted by a bar over the symbol for the corresponding quark, such as a U with the line across for an up antiquark. As with antimatter in general, antiquarks have the same mass, mean lifetime, and spin as their respective quarks, but the electric charge and other charges have the opposite sign. Quarks are spin minus 1/2 particles, which means they are fermions according to the spin statistics theorem. They are subject to the Pauli exclusion principle, which states that no two identical fermions can simultaneously occupy the same quantum state. This is in contrast to the bosons, bosons, particles with integer spin, of which any number can be in the same state. Unlike leptons, quarks possess color charge, which causes them to engage in the strong interaction. The resulting attraction between different quarks causes the formation of composite particles known as hadrons. Oh wow, we have an ad break. This is great. Actually, I do want to see, is there like a reading Wikipedia category? I need to swap this. I need to make changes. I'm gonna continue to be really mad at my stream. Wikipedia speedruns that's an entire category. I've watched Wikipedia speedruns. Wait, what's Wiki Adventure? Oh, that's like a literal puzzle adventure game? Wait, is this an actual thing? Or is it just... Oh, this is... No, this is not. Okay, okay. Reading. reading fun. Sure. I don't know. It's more accurate. This is great. Okay. The quarks that determine the quantum numbers of hadrons are called valence quarks. Apart from these, any hadron may contain an indefinite number of virtual C quarks, antiquarks, and gluons, which do not influence its quantum numbers. There are two families of hadrons. Actually, you know what? Let me grab so y'all can see the thing that I'm reading. Where's the thing? Where's the thing that I have pictured in my brain that I want? This. You. Does not fit at all. Oh, wait. Let me fix that. Yeah! Science, baby! We're doing it! Alright. So where was I? Yes, there are two families of hadrons, baryons with 3 valence quarks and mesons with a valence quark and an antiquark. The most common baryons are the proton and the neutron, the building blocks of the atomic nucleus. A great number of hadrons are known, see the list, most of them differentiated by their quark content and the properties these constituent quarks confer. They're going all out on the vocab. The existence of exotic hadrons with more valence quarks, such as tetraquarks and pentaquarks, I love that, was conjectured from the beginning of the quark model, but not discovered until the early 21st century. Elementary fermions are grouped into 3 generations, each comprising 2 leptons and 2 quarks. The first generation includes up and down quarks, the second strange and charm quarks, and the third bottom and top quarks. All searches for a 4th generation of quarks and other elementary fermions have failed, and there is strong indirect evidence that no more than 3 generations exist. Particles in higher generations generally have a greater mass and less stability, causing them to decay into lower generation particles by means of weak interactions. Only first generation, up and down, quarks occur commonly in nature. Heavier quarks can only be created in high energy collisions, such as those involving cosmic rays, and decay quickly. However, they are thought to have been present during the first fractions of a second after the Big Bang, when the universe was in an extremely hot and dense phase, the quark epoch. Epoch? I actually don't know if I've heard that word said out loud. I see it written all the time. I actually don't know how it's said. Studies of heavier quarks are conducted in artificially created conditions, such as in particle accelerators. We love CERN. CERN is great. Having electric charge, mass, color, charge, and flavor, quarks are the only known elementary particles that engage in all 4 fundamental interactions of contemporary physics: electromagnetism, gravitation, strong interaction, and weak interaction. Gravitation is too weak to be relevant. I'm sorry, that part alone, I'm just like, gravity is weak. It's weak, y'all. Falling and whatnot. Pfft. You even lift, bro. Gravitation is too weak to be relevant to individual particle interactions, except at extremes of energy and distance scales. However, since no successful quantum theory of gravity exists, gravitation is not described by the standard model. See a table. Okay. This is all great. But not what I'm looking for. Color charge, strong interaction, mass, size, table of property. See, this is where physics loses me. What? Interacting. Interacting quarks. As described by quantum chromodynamics, the strong interaction between quarks is mediated by gluons, massless vector gauge bosons. Oh my god, I can't. Words. Each gluon carries one color charge and one anticolor charge. In the standard framework of particle interactions, part of a more generous formulation known as the perturbation theory, gluons are constantly exchanged between quarks through a virtual emission and absorption process. When a gluon is transferred between quarks, a color change occurs in both. For example, if a red quark emits a red antigen green gluon, it becomes green, and if a green quark absorbs a red antigen gluon, it becomes red. Therefore, while each quark's color constantly changes, their strong interaction is preserved. Interesting. Since gluons carry color charge, they themselves are able to emit and absorb other gluons. This causes asymptotic freedom. As quarks come closer to each other, the chromodynamic binding force between them weakens. Oof. Conversely, as the distance between quarks increases, the binding force strengthens. The color field becomes stressed, much like an elastic band is stressed when stretched, and more gluons of appropriate color are spontaneously created to strengthen the field. Above a certain energy threshold, pairs of quarks and antiquarks are created. These pairs bind with the quarks being separated, causing new hadrons to form. This phenomenon is known as color confinement. Quarks never appear in isolation. This process of hadronization occurs before quarks, formed in a high-energy collision, and are able to interact in any other way. The only exception is a top quark, which may decay before it hadronizes. Okay. It still doesn't sound like the teleporty thingy. But... Oh, that's that. No, I meant to just click back into it so I could see other stuff. Okay, internet. Particles that travel throughout the universe. I mean, cosmic rays, yes, but not what I meant. Ugh. I think my stepdad's sending me pictures of cats, as he should. Again, that's not quite it. Grr! Also, I love that's just space.com. I need to freaking figure out what I read. Because I did talk to my stepdad about it, because he's taken a bit of physics, and he was just like, I don't remember what that's called, but that is a thing. And I was like, thank you, I'm not crazy. But it's definitely a thing. Fermilab. Fermilab was discussed. Oh my god. Okay. Higgs boson is a particle associated with the Higgs fields, the mechanism through which elementary particles gain mass. Without the Higgs field or something similar, atoms would not form, and there would be no chemistry, no biology, and no life. Way to be dramatic, my goodness. The Higgs field is like a giant vat of molasses spread throughout the universe. Most of the known types of particles that travel through it stick to the molasses, which slows them down and makes them heavier. The Higgs boson is a particle that helps transmit the mass-giving Higgs force field, similar to the way a particle of light, the photon, transmits the electromagnetic field. The ATLAS and CMS experiments at CERN's Large Hadron Collider in Geneva, Switzerland, announced the discovery of the Higgs particle in July 2012. I remember that, because they called it the God particle, and so many Christians were like, see, they proved God exists, and everyone who had critical thinking skills and could read was like, that is not anything that they said. No. Read the article. That's definitely a time where you don't just read the headline and be like, I know. Have you looked at quantum entanglement? Oh, no, I have not. I'm sorry, I meant to. Quantum entanglement. Wikipedia, my best friend that makes my head hurt. Ooh. That juice is much tartar than I thought. Woo. Okay. Quantum entanglement is the phenomenon that occurs when a duet of particles are generated, interact, or share spatial proximity in such a way that the quantum state of each particle of the group cannot be described independently of the state of others, including when the particles are separated by a large distance. The topic of quantum entanglement is at the heart of the disparity between classical and quantum physics. Entanglement is a primary feature of quantum mechanics not present in classical mechanics. Okay. I don't know if I understand what they're saying. I don't think this is what I'm talking about, but I also am intrigued of what the frick is this? Measurements of physical properties. No. Properties. Brain. Okay. Such as position, momentum, spin, and polarization performed on entangled particles can, in some cases, be found to be perfectly correlated. For example, if a pair of entangled particles is generated such that their total spin is known to be 0, and one particle is found to have a clockwise spin on a first axis, then the split of the other particle, measured on the same axis, is found to be anti-clockwise. However, this behavior gives rise to seemingly paradoxical effects. Any measurement of particles' properties results in an apparent and irreversible wave function collapse of that particle and changes the original quantum state. With entanglement particles, such measurements affect the entangled system as a whole. Okay. According to some interpretations of quantum mechanics, the effect of one measurement occurs instantly. Other interpretations, which do not recognize wave function collapse, dispute that there is any effect at all. However, all interpretations agree that entanglement produces correlation between the measurements and that the mutual information between the entanglement particles can be exploited, but that any transmission of information at faster than light speeds is impossible. Thus, despite popular thought to the contrary, quantum entanglement cannot be used for faster than light communication. I get what you're saying, but you made that mad wordy. Quantum entanglement has been demonstrated experimentally with photons, electrons, and even small diamonds. Okay? The use of entanglement in communication, computation, and quantum radar is an active area of research and development. That is cool. Also, I feel like I heard someone talk about this, specifically in tech worlds. Bell tests have since been performed where the locations were sufficiently separated that communications at the speed of light would have taken longer, in one case 10,000 times longer than the interval between the measures. Okay. This is very cool. Is not the teleport thing, though. It's a wild timing. Right? Right? No, this is fascinating. Let's read about antimatter. Why not? We're here. And I kind of forget what it is, even though I read an entire book on it. Well, actually, no. I read an entire book on dark matter. Which also is the thing where I was like, that was really cool. I don't remember anything about it. Antimatter! Although it is a staple of science fiction, antimatter is as real as matter. For every particle, physicists have discovered a corresponding antiparticle, which looks and behaves in almost the same way. Antiparticles, though, have the opposite properties of their corresponding particles. An antiproton, for example, has a negative electric charge, while a proton is positively charged. I actually do remember this. I love WIMPs. I love that. No one has ever directly observed dark matter, but two clues led astronomers to suspect its existence. First, when researchers measured the masses of all the stars and planets that make up the galaxies, they discovered that the gravity of those objects alone would not be great enough to hold them together. Something they could not see must have been contributing mass and therefore gravitational pull. Second, they observed in space the kind of distortions of light usually caused by large masses in areas that seemed empty. I want to say that there was someone who suspected something akin to dark matter, like centuries before it was like observable with calculations and whatnot. The composition of dark matter is unknown, and its existence shows that the standard model of particle physics is incomplete. Several theories of particle physics, such as supersymmetry, predict that weakly interacting massive particles, WIMPs, exist with properties suitable for explaining dark matter. Dark energy. It's so dark, bro. You just wouldn't understand. In the 20th century, astronomers first discovered that the universe was getting bigger. They found this by observing something similar to the Doppler effect in the light coming from distant galaxies. The Doppler effect is what causes a car horn to change in pitch from high to low as it approaches and passes. This happens because the sound waves are compressed as the car moves toward you, resulting in a higher pitch, and are stretched as it recedes, resulting in a lower pitch. As an object approaches you, the light waves coming from it compress. Astronomers call this blue shift. When light waves stretch as an object moves farther away, astronomers call it redshift. By measuring the spectrum of astronomical object, astronomers can tell how much the space between the object and observer has stretched as the light traveled through it. When astronomer Vesto Slipher? I'm so sorry to this person. Measured light coming from other galaxies, he found that almost all were redshifted or moving away. Oh yeah, because you're in the center of the universe no matter where you are, because it's expanding evenly in all directions. Which is wild. He found that those that seemed dimmer and farther away have even higher redshifts. The universe was expanding. This led astronomers to the idea of the Big Bang. Love the Big Bang. Not the show. We don't talk about the show. Oh, you missed. Oh! Hi. Do. I'm sorry. Look, I can read a story after. I'll read something more entertaining and not physicsy. I just want to finish this little bit because I'm intrigued. Astronomers assumed, however, that the force of gravity from all the matter in the universe would slow the expansion. They were in for a surprise in 1998 when they discovered that the expansion was actually speeding up. Astronomers discovered this when they measured the brightness of the light coming from a certain type of supernova that always explodes with roughly the same energy. The dimmer the light from the supernova, the farther the distance it had traveled to Earth. They discovered that the supernovae were farther away than their redshift measurements predicted. The universe was expanding at an accelerating rate. Some particle astrophysicists think this is happening because a force with a repulsive gravity is pushing the universe apart. They call this force dark energy. I love it. So I was thinking of like actually reading like a short story, since only my audio is really working. But I was thinking of like I have a short story that I love. It's just really unhappy. Because it's Harrison Bergeron. I freaking love that short story, and I think absolutely everyone should read that short story, but it's like super sad and depressing, but it's so freaking good, but it's super sad and depressing. Do I mean, like, do you guys want to hear a really depressing story time? You can try spontaneous quantum vacuum fluctuation, but I don't think it's quite what you're talking about either. Yeah, because, like, this is a thing that it's constant. Like, it's happening all the time, continuously, forever, and that's, like, how it is. So it's, like, it's not a spontaneous thing. It's just, like, these really teeny tiny little things are just zipping everywhere, essentially teleporting everywhere. And that's just, like, how they are. It's just how the world works. It's real weird. Hidden variable theory, that just makes me think it's like, haha, I'm hiding. You'll never know my value. It's great. It's really great. Spooky action at a distance. Okay, Einstein is... Einstein has some thoughts. Yeah, I'll have to just go back through, like, the books that well, I'm here right now. I mean, Ollie, would you like me to read a story? I can read a story, but I would love if you had a recommendation. Because I don't know a lot of, like, short stories. Yes, I did have to update I'm reading Don Quixote. I haven't read in a few days because I had a callback, so I was freaking out about, my... Oh, I guess this should be a just chatting. That's what this should be. How change this? This. It's this. Just chatting. All the dropped frames. All of them. Absolutely all of them. My brain just isn't for oh, that's totally fair. Ollie's beating the baby, but they said they were down for depressing short stories. You're ready. Okay. Okay. I'll try to figure out whatever the frick this is. What's like Harrison Bergeron. Bergeron. That's how it's spelled. Okay. I will maybe just pop up. Wait, they made a movie of it? Oh, shiz. Alright. Alright, let's make... Ooh, that's, like, too big. Let's make it like that. Let's, I want to make sure that we're... Nope. Oh, God. Oh, I'm pressing all the buttons I don't mean to be pressing. So Harrison Bergeron, I want you to be able to see the thing. Wait. Oh, it's this button. It's this button. Okay. Yeah, we can yeah, it's Kurt Vonnegut. That's his name. I'm just going to have him peeking just a little bit. He's just peeking. Cool. And then in another window, I'm going to pull it up. Is this it? Yeah, okay. Let me get this so that I can also see chat at the same time, because I love you guys. Bonnie Boy, oh yeah, this is like my favorite thing. I love this short story. Is it happy? God, no! But it's so good. Harrison Bergeron by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. The year was 2081 and everybody was finally equal. They weren't only equal before God and the law, they were equal every which way. Nobody was smarter than anybody else. Nobody was better looking than anybody else. Nobody was stronger or quicker than anybody else. All this equality was due to the 211th, 212th, and 213th Amendments to the Constitution and to the unceasing vigilance of agents of the United States Handicapper General. Some things about living still weren't quite right, though. April, for instance, still drove people crazy by not being springtime, and it was in that clammy month that the HG men took George and Hazel Bergeron's 14-year-old son, Harrison, away. It was tragic, all right, but George and Hazel couldn't think about it very hard. Hazel had a perfectly average intelligence, which meant she couldn't think about anything except in short bursts. And George, while his intelligence was way above normal, had a little mental handicap radio in his ear. He was required by law to wear it at all times. It was tuned to a government transmitter. Every 20 seconds or so, the transmitter would send out some sharp noise to keep people like George from taking unfair advantage of their brains. George and Hazel were watching television. There were tears on Hazel's cheeks, but she'd forgotten for the moment what they were about. On the television screen were ballerinas. A buzzer sounded at George's head. His thoughts fled in panic like bandits from a burglar alarm. That was a really pretty dance, that dance they just did, said Hazel. Huh? Said George. That dance. It was nice, said Hazel. Yep, said George. He tried to think a little about the ballerinas. They weren't really very good, no better than anybody else would have been anyway. They were burdened with sash weights and bags of birdshot, and their faces were masked, so that no one, seeing a free and graceful gesture or a pretty face, would feel like something the cat drug in. George was toying with the vague notion that maybe dancers shouldn't be handicapped, but he didn't get very far with it before another noise in his ear radio scattered his thoughts. George winced. So did 2 out of the 8 ballerinas. Hazel saw him wince. Having no mental handicap herself, she had to ask George what the latest sound had been. Sounded like somebody hitting a milk bottle with a ball-peen hammer, said George. I think it would be real interesting hearing all the different sounds, said Hazel, a little envious. All the things they think up. Said George. Only, if I was a handicapper general, you know what I would do, said Hazel. Hazel, as a matter of fact, bore a strong resemblance to the handicapper general, a woman named Diana Moon Glampers. If I was Diana Moon Glampers, said Hazel, I'd have chimes on Sunday. Just chimes. Kind of in honor of religion. I could think, if it was just chimes, said George. Well, maybe make 'em real loud, said Hazel. I think I'd make a good handicapper general. Good as anybody else, said George. Who knows better than I do what normal is, said Hazel. Right, said George. He began to think glimmeringly about his abnormal son who was now in jail, about Harrison, but a 21-gun salute in his head stopped that. Boy, said Hazel, that was a doozy, wasn't it? It was such a doozy that George was white and trembling, and tears stood on the rim of his red eyes. 2 of the 8 ballerinas had collapsed to the studio floor, were holding their temples. All of a sudden you look so tired, said Hazel. Why don't you stretch out on the sofa, so's you can rest your handicap bag on the pillows, honey bunch? She was referring to the 47 pounds of birdshot in the canvas bag, which was padlocked around George's neck. Go on and rest the bag for a little while, she said. I don't care if you're not equal to me for a while. George weighed the bag with his hands. I don't mind it, he said. I don't notice it anymore. It's just part of me. You've been so tired lately. Kind of wore out, said Hazel. If there was just some way we could make a little hole in the bottom of the bag and just take out a few of them lead balls. Just a few. 2 years in prison and $2,000 fine for every ball I took out, said George. I don't call that a bargain. If you could just take a few of them out when you came home from work, said Hazel. I mean, you don't compete with anybody around here. You just sit around. If I tried to get away with it, said George, then other people would get away with it, and pretty soon we'd be right back to the Dark Ages again, with everybody competing against everybody else. You wouldn't like that, would you? Oh, I'd hate that, said Hazel. There you are, said George. The minute people start cheating on laws, what do you think happens to society? If Hazel hadn't been able to come up with an answer to this question, George couldn't have supplied one. A siren was going off in his head. Reckon it'd fall all apart, said Hazel. What would? Said George, blankly. Society, said Hazel uncertainly. Wasn't that what you just said? Who knows, said George. The television program was suddenly interrupted for a news bulletin. It wasn't clear at first as to what the bulletin was about, since the announcer, like all announcers, had a serious speech impediment. For about half a minute, and in a state of high excitement, the announcer tried to say, "Ladies and gentlemen." He finally gave up, handed the bulletin to a ballerina to read. That's all right, Hazel said to the announcer. He tried. That's the big thing. He tried to do the best he could with what God gave him. He should get a nice raise for trying so hard. Ladies and gentlemen, said the ballerina, reading the bulletin. She must have been extraordinarily beautiful, because the mask she wore was hideous. And it was easy to see that she was the strongest and most graceful of all the dancers, for her handicap bags were as big as those worn by 200-pound men. And she had to apologize at once for her voice, which was a very unfair voice for a woman to use. Her voice was a warm, luminous, timeless melody. "Excuse me," she said, and she began again, making her voice absolutely uncompetitive. "Harrison Bergeron, age 14, she said in a grackle squawk, has just escaped from jail, where he was held on suspicion of plotting to overthrow the government. He is a genius and an athlete, is under-handicapped, and should be regarded as extremely dangerous." A police photograph of Harrison Bergeron was flashed on the screen upside down, then sideways, upside down again, then right side up. The picture showed the full length of Harrison against a background calibrated in feet and inches. He was exactly 7 feet tall. The rest of Harrison's appearance was Halloween and hardware. Nobody had ever borne heavier handicaps. He had outgrown his hindrances faster than the HG men could think them up. Instead of a little ear radio for a mental handicap, he wore a tremendous pair of earphones and spectacles with thick, wavy lenses. The spectacles were intended to make him not only half-blind, but to give him, wanging headaches besides. Scrap metal was hung all over him. Ordinarily, there was a certain symmetry, a military neatness to the handicaps issued to strong people. But Harrison looked like a walking junkyard. In the race of life, Harrison carried 300 pounds. And to offset his good looks, the HG men required that he wear at all times a red rubber ball for a nose, keep his eyebrows shaved off, and cover his even white teeth with black caps and snaggletooth random. "If you see this boy," said the ballerina, "do not, I repeat, do not try to reason with him." There was the shriek of a door being torn from its hinges. Screams and barking cries of consternation came from the television set. The photograph of Harrison Bergeron on the screen jumped again and again as though dancing to the tune of an earthquake. George Bergeron correctly identified the earthquake, and well he might have, for many was the time his own home had danced to the same crashing tune. "My God," said George, "that must be Harrison." The realization was blasted from his mind instantly by the sound of an automobile collision in his head. When George could open his eyes again, the photograph of Harrison was gone. A living, breathing Harrison filled the screen. Clanking, clownish, and huge, Harrison stood in the center of the studio. The knob of the uprooted studio door was still in his hand. Ballerinas, technicians, musicians, and announcers cowered on their knees before him, expecting to die. "I am the Emperor," cried Harrison. "Do you hear me? I am the Emperor. Everybody must do what I say at once." He stamped his foot, and the studio shook. "Even as I stand here," he bellowed, "crippled, hobbled, sickened, I am a greater ruler than any man who ever lived. Now watch me become what I can become." Harrison tore the straps of his handicap harness like wet tissue paper, tore straps guaranteed to support 5,000 pounds. Harrison's scrap iron handicaps crashed to the floor. Harrison thrust his thumbs under the bar of the padlock that secured his head harness. The bar snapped like celery. Harrison smashed his headphones and spectacles against the wall. He flung away his rubber ball nose, revealed a man that would have awed Thor, the god of thunder. "I shall now select my empress," he said, looking down on the cowering people. "Let the first woman who dares rise to her feet claim her mate and her throne." A moment passed, and then a ballerina arose, swaying like a willow. Harrison plucked the mental handicap from her ear, snapped off her physical handicaps with marvelous delicacy. Last of all, he removed her mask. She was blindingly beautiful. "Now," said Harrison, taking her hand, "shall we show the people the meaning of the word dance? Music," he commanded. The musicians scrambled back into their chairs, and Harrison stripped them of their handicaps too. "Play your best," he told them, "and I'll make you barons and dukes and earls." The music began. It was normal at first. Cheap, silly, false. But Harrison snatched 2 musicians from their chairs, waved them like batons as he sang the music as he wanted it played. He slammed them back into their chairs. The music began again, and was much improved. Harrison and his empress merely listened to the music for a while, listened gravely, as though synchronizing their heartbeats with it. They shifted their weights to their toes. Harrison placed his big hands on the girl's tiny waist, letting her sense the weightlessness that would soon be hers. And then, in an explosion of joy and grace, into the air they sprang. Not only were the laws of the land abandoned, but but the law of gravity and the laws of motion as well. They reeled, whirled, swiveled, flounced, capered, gamboled, and spun. They leaped like deer on the moon. The studio ceiling was 30 feet high, but each leap brought the dancers nearer to it. It became their obvious intention to kiss the ceiling. They kissed it. And then, neutraling gravity with love and pure will, they remained suspended in an air inches below the ceiling, and they kissed each other for a long, long time. It was then that Diana Moon Clampers, the handicapped general, came into the studio with a double-barreled 10-gauge shotgun. She fired twice, and the Emperor and the Empress were dead before they hit the floor. Diana Moon Clampers loaded the gun again. She aimed it at the musicians and told them that they had 10 seconds to get their handicaps back on. It was then that the Bergeron's television tube burned out. Hazel turned to comment about the blackout to George, but George had gone out into the kitchen for a can of beer. George came back in with the beer, paused while a handicap signal shook him up, and then he sat down again. "You've been crying," he said to Hazel. "Yep," she said. "What about?" he said. "I forget," she said. "Something real sad on television." "What was it?" he said. "It's all kind of mixed up in my mind," said Hazel. "Forget sad things," said George. "I always do," said Hazel. "That's my girl," said George. He winced. There was the sound of a riveting gun in his head. "Gee, I could tell that one was a doozy," said Hazel. "You can say that again," said George. "Gee," said Hazel, "I could tell that one was a doozy." The end. That's Harrison Bergeron! I love that short story. It's so bleak, obviously, but I just love how, like, in such a short bit of prose, like, it just built an entire world. An entire super bleak, messed up, totalitarian, dystopian regime, but, like, it built a whole world. It's so sad, but, like, I don't know. I love it. I love it so much. I did forget he was 14 in the story, so the whole kissing bit weirds me out, because they don't say the ages of the dancers, but still, he's 14. He shouldn't be kissing. But yeah. I hope that was easier for the brain than physics. Autism? Wait, what? In response to what? I have a delay. Oh my gosh, so much reading. Yeah, I love that. I need more, like, good short stories, though. I don't know if I know of any other, like, short little good ones like that. Also, Ollie, I think my chat keeps disconnecting a little bit, but I love that that's the only comment of yours that I see, and so I assume that that's all, and I just like that that's... I'm just gonna take it as that's your entire response to the whole short story. And when she repeat the phrase, oh, yeah. I love that, well, because, you know, that's just the straightforward thing. She doesn't need the intelligence handicapper. So it's just, he said you could say that again, and so she did. Or it could be autism. It's true. He didn't explicitly state. It could have been. Have I read any other short stories. We read that in school, so it's like that's how I know that one. So I was like, yo, that's really good. I know I have a short story printed out that from college I also thought was really good, but that one was like actually super freaking long. I don't think I have any others. Oh wait. Actually, I think everyone has read this one. But also like literally how long it is it? How long are you? How long? Because that's the only other thing I can think of. I don't actually want to download you. You're 19 pages long. 18, you're 18 pages long. That's a lot. That's a lot. I'm willing to read it. Do you guys want The Most Dangerous Game? I don't know how many people I have read it, but also my degree was English creative writing, so I've read a lot of things. But yes, The Most Dangerous Game by Richard Connell? Connell. But yeah, if so. Cool. Love that's a classic little image right there. Yeah. Oh, I don't even no, I should adjust it a little bit. Get that framing better. Yeah. Yeah. All right, do you want another story and then I'll call it? This one's longer. It's like 18 pages. I'm gonna story time. Playing Sims 2, whatever makes you happy. Great. This is less depressing. This is less upsetty. Your spaghetti will be less upsetty. I will read this and then I'll probably call it, because God, these frames are making me so angry. Cool. This is gonna be long. And The Most Dangerous Game. Content warning, but like I didn't do a content warning for the other one. Also, just editing while I watch you. I love that. I will be your background noise. Off there to the right, somewhere, is a large island, said Whitney. It's rather a mystery. What island is it? Rainsford asked. Oh! Oh, thank you for gifting us some. Oh, and to Cave! Oh, that's so nice. Thank you. Y'all are so generous with in such a bad tech sitch. The old charts call it Ship Trap Island, Whitney replied. A suggestive name, isn't it? Sailors have a curious dread of the place. I don't know why. Some superstition. Can't see it, remarked Rainsford, trying to peer through the dank tropical night that was palpable as it pressed its thick, warm blackness upon the yacht. You've good eyes, said Whitney with a laugh. And I've seen you pick off a moose moving in the brown fall bush at 400 yards, but even you can't see 4 miles or so through a moonless Caribbean night. Nor 4 yards, admitted Rainsford. Ugh, it's like moist black velvet. It will be light enough in Rio, promised Whitney. We should make it in a few days. I hope the Jaguar guns have come from Purdy's. We should have some good hunting up the Amazon. Great sport, hunting. The best sport in the world, agreed Rainsford. For the hunter, amended Whitney. Not for the Jaguar. Don't talk rot, Whitney, said Rainsford. You're a big game hunter, not a philosopher. Who cares how a jaguar feels? Perhaps the jaguar does, observed Whitney. Bah, they've no understanding. Even so, I'd rather think they understand one thing. fear. The fear of pain and the fear of death. Nonsense, laughed Rainsford. This hot weather is making you soft, Whitney. Be a realist. The world is made up of two classes, the hunter and the huntees. Luckily, you and I are hunters. Do you think we've passed that island yet? I can't tell in the dark. I hope so. Why? Asked Rainsford. That place has a reputation. A bad one. Cannibals? Suggested Rainsford. Hardly. Even cannibals wouldn't live in such a godforsaken place, but it's gotten into sailor lore somehow. Didn't you notice that the crew's nerves seemed a bit jumpy today? They were a bit strange, now you mention it. Even Captain Nielsen, yes! Even that tough-minded old Swede who'd go up to the devil himself and ask for a light. Those fishy blue eyes had a look I never saw there before. All I could get out of him was, "This place has an evil name among seafaring men, sir." Then he said to me, very gravely, "Don't you feel anything?" As if the air about us was actually poisonous. Now, you mustn't laugh when I tell you this. I did feel something like a sudden chill. There was no breeze. The sea was as flat as the plate glass window. We were drawing near the island then. What I felt was a mental chill, a sort of sudden dread. Pure imagination, said Rainsford. One superstitious sailor can taint the whole ship's company with his fear. Maybe, but sometimes I think sailors have an extra sense that tells them when they are in danger. Sometimes I think evil is a tangible thing, with wavelengths, just as sound and light have. Oh my god, physics, full circle. An evil place can, so to speak, broadcast vibrations of evil. Anyhow, I'm glad we're getting out of this zone. Well, I think I'll turn in now, Rainsford. I'm not sleepy. I'm gonna smoke another pipe up in the afterdeck. Good night then, Rainsford. See you at breakfast. Right. Good night, Whitney. There was no sound in the night as Rainsford sat there but the muffled throb of the engine that drove the yacht swiftly through the darkness and the swish and ripple of the wash of the propeller. Rainsford, reclining in a steamer chair, indolently puffed on his favorite briar. The sensuous drowsiness of the night was on him. It's so dark, he thought, that I could sleep without closing my eyes. The night would be my eyelids. An abrupt sound startled him. Off to the right he heard it, and his ears, expert in such matters, could not be mistaken. Again he heard the sound, and again. Somewhere, off in the blackness, someone had fired a gun 3 times. Rainsford sprang up and moved quickly to the rail, mystified. He strained his eyes in the direction from which the reports had come, but it was like trying to see through a blanket. He leaped upon the rail and balanced himself there to get greater elevation, his pipe striking a rope, and was knocked from his mouth. He lunged for it. A short, hoarse cry came from his lips as he realized he had reached too far and had lost his balance. The cry was pinched off short as the blood-warm waters of the Caribbean Sea dosed over his head. He struggled up to the surface and tried to call out, but the wash from the speeding yacht slapped him in the face, and the salt water in his open mouth made him gag and strangle. Desperately, he struck out with strong strokes after the receding lights of the yacht, but he stopped before he had swum 50 feet. A certain cool-headedness had come to it. It was not the first time he had been in a tight place. There was a chance that his cries could be heard by someone aboard the yacht, but that chance was slender and grew more slender as the yacht raced on. He wrestled himself out of his clothes and shouted with all his power. The lights of the yacht became faint and ever-vanishing fireflies. Then they were blotted out entirely by the night. Rainsford remembered the shots. They had come from the right, and doggedly he swam in that direction, swimming with slow, deliberate strokes, conserving his strength. For a seemingly endless time he fought the sea. He began to count his strokes. He could do possibly 100 more, and then Rainsford heard a sound. It came out of the darkness. A high, screaming sound. The sound of an animal in an extremity of anguish and terror. He did not recognize the animal that made the sound. He did not try to. With fresh vitality, he swam toward the sound. He heard it again. Then it was cut short by another noise. Crisp, staccato. Pistol shot, muttered Rainsford, swimming on. 10 minutes of determined effort brought about another sound to his ears, the most welcome he had ever heard, the muttering and growling of the sea breaking on a rocky shore. He was almost on the rocks before he saw them. On a night less calm, he would have been shattered against them. With his remaining strength, he dragged himself from the swirling waters. Jagged crags appeared to jut up into the opaqueness. He forced himself upward, hand over hand. Gasping, his hands raw, he reached a flat place at the top. Dense jungle came down to the very edge of the cliffs. What perils that tangle of trees and underbrush might hold for him did not concern Rainsford just then. All he knew was that he was safe from his enemy, the sea, and that utter weariness was on him. He flung himself down at the jungle edge and tumbled headlong into the deepest sleep of his life. When he opened his eyes, he knew from the position of the sun that it was late in the afternoon. Sleep had given him new vigor. A sharp hunger was picking at him. He looked about him, almost cheerfully. Where there are pistol shots, there are men. Where there are men, there is food, he thought. But what kind of men, he wondered, in so forbidding a place? An unbroken front of snarled and ragged jungle fringed the shore. He saw no sign of a trail through the closely knit web of weeds and trees. It was easier to go along the shore, and Rainsford floundered along by the water. Not far from where he landed, he stopped. Some wounded thing, by evidence a large animal, had thrashed about in the underbrush. The jungle weeds were crushed down and the moss was lacerated. One patch of weeds was stained crimson. A small glittering object not far away caught Rainsford's eye, and he picked it up. It was an empty cartridge. "A .22, he remarked. "That's odd. Must have been a fairly large animal, too. The hunter had his nerve with him to tackle it with a light gun. It's clear that the brute put up a fight. I suppose the first 3 shots I heard was when the hunter flushed his quarry and wounded it. The last shot was when he trailed it here and finished it." He examined the ground closely and found what he had hoped to find, the print of hunting boots. They pointed along the cliff in the direction he had been going. Eagerly he hurried along, now slipping on a rotten log or a loose stone, but making headway. Night was beginning to settle down on the island. Bleak darkness was blacking out the sea and jungle when Rainsford sighted the lights. He came upon them as he turned the crook in the coastline, and his first thought was that he had come upon a village, for there were so many lights. But as he forged along, he saw to his great astonishment that all the lights were in one enormous building, a lofty structure with pointed towers plunging upward into the gloom. His eyes made out the shadowy outlines of a palatial chateau. It was set on a high bluff, and on 3 sides of it cliffs dived down to where the sea licked greedily lips in the shadows. Mirage, thought Rainsford. But it was no mirage, he found when he opened the tall spiked iron gate. The stone steps were real enough. The massive door with a leering gargoyle for a knocker was real enough. Yet above it all hung an air of unreality. He lifted the knocker, and it creaked up stiffly, as if it had never been used. He let it fall, and it startled him with his booming loudness. He thought he heard steps within. The door remained closed. Again, Rainsford lifted the heavy knocker and let it fall. The door opened then. Opened as suddenly as if it were on a spring, and Rainsford stood blinking in the river of glaring gold light that poured out. The first thing Rainsford's eyes discerned was the largest man Rainsford had ever seen, a gigantic creature, solidly made and black-bearded to the waist. In his hand, the man held a long-barreled revolver, and he was pointing it straight at Rainsford's heart. Out of the snarl of beard, 2 small eyes regarded Rainsford. "Don't be alarmed," said Rainsford, with a smile which he hoped was disarming. "I'm no robber. I fell off a yacht. My name is Sanger Rainsford of New York City." The menacing look in the eyes did not change. The revolver pointed as rigidly as if the giant were a statue. He gave no sign that he understood Rainsford's words, or that he had even heard them. He was dressed in a uniform, a black uniform trimmed with gray astrakhan. "I'm Sanger Rainsford of New York," Rainsford began again. "I fell off a yacht. I am hungry." The man's only answer was to raise with his thumb the hammer of his revolver. Then Rainsford saw the man's free hand go to his forehead in a military salute, and he saw him click his heels together and stand at attention. Another man was coming down the broad marble steps, an erect, slender man in evening clothes. He advanced to Rainsford and held out his hand. In a cultivated voice marked by a slight accent that gave it added precision and deliberateness, he said, It is very great pleasure and honor to welcome Mr. Sanger Rainsford, the celebrated hunter, to my home. Automatically, Rainsford shook the man's hand. I've read your book about hunting snow leopards in Tibet, you see, explained the man. I am General Zaroff. Rainsford's first impression was that the man was singularly handsome. His second was that there was an original, almost bizarre quality about the general's face. He was a tall man, past middle age, for his hair was a vivid white, but his thick eyebrows and pointed military mustache were as black as the night from which Rainsford had come. His eyes, too, were black and very bright. He had high cheekbones, a sharp-cut nose, a spare, dark face, a face of a man used to giving orders, the face of an aristocrat. Turning to the giant in uniform, the general made a sign. The giant put away his pistol, saluted, withdrew. Ivan is an incredibly strong fellow, remarked the general, but he has the misfortune to be deaf and dumb. A simple fellow, but I'm afraid, like all his race, he is a bit of a savage. Is he Russian? He is a Cossack, said the general. His smile showed red lips and pointed teeth. So am I. Come, he said, we shouldn't be chatting here. We can talk later. Now, if you want clothes, food, rest, you shall have them. This is a most restful spot. Ivan had reappeared, and the general spoke to him with lips that moved but gave forth no sound. Follow Ivan, if you please, Mr. Rainsford, said the general. I was about to have my dinner when you came in. I'll wait for you. You'll find that my clothes will fit you, I think. It was to a huge, beam-ceilinged bedroom with a canopied bed big enough for 6 men that Rainsford followed the silent giant. Ivan laid out an evening suit, and Rainsford, as he put it on, noticed that it came from a London tailor who ordinarily cut and sewed for none below the rank of duke. The dining room to which Ivan conducted him was in many ways remarkable. There was a medieval magnificence about it. It suggested a baronial hall of feudal times with its oaken panels, its high ceiling, its vast refectory tables where 20 men could sit down to eat. About the hall were mounted heads of many animals: lions, tigers, elephants, moose, bears, larger or more perfect specimens Rainsford had never seen. At the great table, the general was sitting alone. You'll have a cocktail, Mr. Rainsford, he suggested. The cocktail was surpassingly good, and Rainsford noted the table appointments were of the finest. The linen, the crystal, the silver, the china. They were eating borscht, the rich red soup with whipped cream so dear to Russian palates. Half apologetically, General Zaroff said, We do our best to preserve the amenities of civilization here. Please forgive any lapses. We are well off the beaten track, you know. Do you think the champagne has suffered from its long ocean trip? Not in the least, declared Rainsford. He was finding the general a most thoughtful and affable host, a true cosmopolite. Cosmopolite? But there was one small trait of the general's that made Rainsford uncomfortable. Whenever he looked up from his plate, he found the general studying him, appraising him narrowly. Perhaps, said General Zaroff, you were surprised that I recognized your name. You see, I read all books on hunting, published in English, French, and Russian. I have but one passion in my life, Mr. Rainsford, and it is to hunt. You have some wonderful heads here, said Rainsford as he ate a particularly well-cooked filet mignon. That Cape buffalo is the largest I ever saw. Oh, that fellow. Yes, he was a monster. Did he charge you? Hurled me against a tree, said the general. Fractured my skull, but I got the brute. I always thought, said Rainsford, that the Cape buffalo is the most dangerous of all big game. For a moment, the general did not reply. He was smiling, his curious red-lipped smile. Then he said slowly, No, you are wrong, sir. The Cape buffalo is not the most dangerous big game. He sipped his wine. Here in my preserve on this island, he said in the same slow tone, I hunt more dangerous game. Rainsford expressed his surprise. Is there big game on this island? The general nodded. The biggest. Really? Oh, it isn't here naturally, of course. I have to stock the island. What have you imported, General? Rainsford asked. Tigers? The general smiled. No, he said. Hunting tigers ceased to interest me some years ago. I exhausted their possibilities, you see. No thrill left in tigers, no real danger. I live for danger, Mr. Rainsford. The general took from his pocket a gold cigarette case and offered his guest a long black cigarette with a silver tip. It was perfumed and gave off a smell like incense. "We will have some capital hunting, you and I," said the general. "I shall be most glad to have your society." "But what game?" began Rainsford. "I'll tell you," said the general. "You will be amused, I know. I think I may say, in all modesty, that I have done a rare thing. I have invented a new sensation. May I pour you another glass of port?" "Thank you, General." The general filled both glasses and said, "God makes some men poets. Some he makes kings, some beggars. Me he made a hunter. My hand was made for the trigger," my father said. "He was a very rich man, with 250,000 acres in the Crimea, and he was an ardent sportsman. When I was only 5 years old, he gave me a little gun, specially made in Moscow for me, to shoot sparrows with. When I shot some of his prize turkeys with it, he did not punish me. He complimented me on my marksmanship. I killed my first bear in the Caucasus when I was 10. My whole life has been one prolonged hunt. I went into the army. It was expected of noblemen's sons, and for a time commanded a division of the Cossack cavalry. But my real interest was always the hunt. I have hunted every kind of game in every land. It would be impossible for me to tell you how many animals I've killed." The general puffed at his cigarette. "After the debacle in Russia, I left the country, for it was imprudent for an officer of the Tsar to stay there. Many noble Russians lost everything. I, luckily, had invested heavily in American securities, so I shall never have to open a tea room in Monte Carlo or drive a taxi in Paris. Naturally, I continued to hunt. Grizzlies in your Rockies, crocodiles in the gangs, rhinoceroses in East Africa. It was in Africa that the cave buffalo hit me and laid me up for 6 months. As soon as I recovered, I started for the Amazon to hunt jaguars, for I had heard they were unusually cunning. They weren't," the Cossack said. "They were no match at all for a hunter with wits about him and a high-powered rifle. I was bitterly disappointed. I was lying in my tent with a splitting headache one night when a terrible thought pushed its way into my mind. Hunting was becoming to bore me. And hunting, remember, had been my life. I have heard that in America, businessmen often go to pieces when they give up the business that has been their life." "Yes, that's so," said Rainsford. The general smiled. "I have no wish to go to pieces," he said. "I must do something. Now, mine is an analytical mind, Mr. Rainsford. Doubtless that this is why I enjoy the problems of the chase." "No doubt, General Zaroff. So," continued the general, "I asked myself why the hunter no longer fascinated me. You are much younger than I am, Mr. Rainsford, and have not hunted as much, but you perhaps can guess the answer." "What was it?" "Simply this. Hunting had ceased to be what you call a sporting proposition. It had become too easy. I always got my quarry. Always. There's no greater bore than perfection." The general lit a fresh cigarette. "No animal had a chance with me anymore. That is no boast. It is a mathematical certainty. The animal had nothing but his legs and his instinct. Instinct is no match for reason. When I thought of this, it was a tragic moment for me, I can tell you." Rainsford leaned across the table, absorbed in what his host was saying. "It came to me as an inspiration what I must do," the general went on. "And that was?" The general smiled, the quiet smile of one who has faced an obstacle and surmounted it with success. "I had to invent a new animal to hunt," he said. "A new animal? You're joking." "Not at all," said the general. "I never joke about hunting. I needed a new animal. I found one. So I bought this island, built this house, and here I do my hunting. The island is perfect for my purposes. There are jungles with a maze of trails in them, hills, swamps, but the animal, General Zaroff." "Oh," said the general, "it supplies me with the most exciting hunting in the world. No other hunting compares with it for an instant. Every day I hunt, and I never grow bored now, for I have a quarry with which I can match my wits." Rainsford's bewilderment showed on his face. "I wanted the ideal animal to hunt," explained the general. "So I said, what are the attributes of an ideal quarry? And the answer was, of course, it must have courage, cunning, and above all, it must be able to reason." "But no animal can reason," objected Rainsford. My dear fellow, said the general, there is one that can. But you can't mean, gasped Rainsford, and why not? I can't believe you are serious, General Zaroff. This is a grisly joke. Why should I not be serious? I am speaking of hunting. Hunting? Great God, General Zaroff, what you speak of is murder. The general laughed with entire good nature. He regarded Rainsford quizzically. I refuse to believe that so modern and civilized a young man as you seem to be harbors romantic ideas about the value of human life. Surely your experiences in the war... He stopped. Did not make me condone cold-blooded murder, finished Rainsford stiffly. Laughter shook the general. How extraordinarily droll you are, he said. One does not expect nowadays to find a young man of the educated class, even in America, with such a naive and, if I may say so, mid-Victorian point of view. It's like finding a snuff box in a limousine. Ah, well, doubtless you have Puritan ancestors. So many Americans appear to have them. I'll wager you'll forget your notions when you go hunting with me. You've a genuine new thrill in store for you, Mr. Rainsford. Thank you. I'm a hunter, not a murderer. Dear me, said the general, quite unruffled. Again, that unpleasant word. But I think I can show you that your scruples are quite ill-founded. Yes? Life is for the strong, to be lived by the strong, and, if needs be, taken by the strong. The weak of the world were put here to give the strong pleasure. I am strong. Why should I not use my gift? If I wish to hunt, why should I not? I hunt the scum of the earth. Sailors from tramp ships, lascars, a bunch of racist words that I'm not going to say. A thoroughbred horse or hound is worth more than a score of them. But they are men, said Rainsford hotly. Precisely, said the general. That is why I use them. It gives me pleasure. They can reason, after a fashion, so they are dangerous. Actually, technically not slurs, but he was very inclusive in the kinds of people that he picks. It's every single race, essentially. Whites included. Yeah. The general's left eyelid fluttered down in a wink. This island is called Shiptrap, he answered. Sometimes it's an angry god of the high seas sends them to me. Sometimes, when Providence is not so kind, I help Providence a bit. Come to the window with me. Rainsford went to the window and looked out toward the sea. Watch! Out there! Exclaimed the general, pointing into the night. Rainsford's eyes saw only blackness, and then, as the general pressed a button, far out to sea, Rainsford saw the flash of lights. The general chuckled. They indicate a channel, he said, where there's none. Giant rocks with razor edges crouch like a sea monster with wide-open jaws. They can crush a ship as easily as I can crush this nut. He dropped a walnut onto the hardwood floor and brought his heel grinding down on it. Oh, yes, he said casually, as if in answer to a question. I have electricity. We try to be civilized here. Civilized? And you shoot down men? A trace of anger was in the general's black eyes, but it was there for but a second. And he said in his most pleasant manner, Dear me, what a righteous young man you are. I assure you, I do not do the thing you suggest. That would be barbarous. I treat these visitors with every consideration. They get plenty of good food and exercise. They get into splendid physical condition. You shall see for yourself tomorrow. What do you mean? We'll visit my training school, smiled the general. It's in the cellar. I have about a dozen pupils down there now. They're from the Spanish bark San Lucar that had a bit of bad luck to go on the rocks out there. A very inferior lot, I regret to say. Poor specimens and more accustomed to the deck than to the jungle. He raised his hand, and Ivan, who served as waiter, brought thick Turkish coffee. Rainsford, with an effort, held his tongue in check. It's a game, you see, pursued the general blandly. I suggest to one of them that we go hunting. I give him a supply of food and an excellent hunting knife. I give him 3 hours' start. I am to follow, armed only with a pistol of the smallest caliber in range. If my quarry eludes me for 3 whole days, he wins the game. If I find him, the general smiles, he loses. Suppose he refuses to be hunted. Oh, said the general, I give him his option, of course. He need not play that game if he doesn't wish to. If he does not wish to hunt, I turn him over to Ivan. Ivan once had the honor of serving as official nodder in the Great White Tsar, and he has his own ideas of sport. Invariably, Mr. Rainsford, invariably, they choose the hunt. And if they win? The smile on the general's face widened. To date, I have not lost, he said. Then he added hastily, I don't wish you to think me a braggart, Mr. Rainsford. Many of them afford only the most elementary sort of problem. Occasionally I strike a Tartar. One almost did win. I eventually had to use the dogs. The dogs? This way, please, I'll show you. The general steered Rainsford to a window. The lights from the window sent a flickering illumination that made grotesque patterns on the courtyard below, and Rainsford could see moving around there a dozen or so huge black shapes. As they turned toward him, their eyes glittered greenly. A rather good lot, I think, observed the general. They are let out at 7 every night. If anyone should try to get into my house, or out of it, something extremely regrettable would occur to him. He hummed a snatch of the song from Folies Bergère. And now, said the general, I want to show you my new collection of heads. Will you come to me to the library? I hope, said Rainsford, that you will excuse me tonight, General Zaroff. I'm really not feeling well. Indeed? The general inquired solicitously. Well, I suppose that's only natural after your long swim. You need a good restful night's sleep. Tomorrow you'll feel like a new man, I'll wager. Then we'll hunt, eh? I've one rather promising prospect. Rainsford was hurrying for the room. Sorry you can't go with me tonight, called the general. I expect rather fair sport. A big, strong person. He looks resourceful. Well, good night, Mr. Rainsford. I hope you have a good night's rest. The bed was good, and the pajamas of the softest silk, and he was tired in every fiber of his being, but nevertheless Rainsford could not quiet his brain with the opiate of sleep. He lay, eyes wide open. Once he thought he heard stealthy steps in the corridor outside his room. He sought to throw open the door. It would not open. He went to the window and looked out. His room was high up in one of the towers. The lights of the chateau were out now, and it was dark and silent. But there was a fragment of sallow moon, and by its wan light he could see dimly the courtyard. There, weaving in and out in the pattern of shadow, were black, noiseless forms. The hounds heard him at the window and looked up, expectantly, with their green eyes. Rainsford went back to the bed and lay down. By many methods he tried to put himself to sleep. He had achieved a doze when, just as morning began to come, he heard, far off in the jungle, the faint report of a pistol. General Zaroff did not appear until luncheon. He was dressed faultlessly in the tweeds of a country squire. He was solicitous about the state of Rainsford's health. As for me, sighed the general, I do not feel so well. I am worried, Mr. Rainsford. Last night I detected traces of my old complaint. To Rainsford's questioning glance, the general said, ennui, boredom. Then, taking a second helping of crêpe Suzette, the general explained, the hunting was not good last night. The fellow lost his head. He made a straight trail that offered no problems at all. That's the trouble with these sailors. They have dull brains to begin with, and they do not know how to get about in the woods. They do excessively stupid and obvious things. It's most annoying. Will you have another glass of... Oh, God, I've heard what this is called. I don't know. Chablis? Mr. Rainsford? No. General, said Rainsford firmly. I wish to leave the island at once. The general raised his thickets of eyebrows. He seemed hurt. But, my dear fellow, the general protested, you've only just come. You've had no hunting. I wish to go today, said Rainsford. He saw the dead black eyes of the general on him, studying him. General Zaroff's face suddenly brightened. He filled Rainsford's glass with more drink from a dusty bottle. Tonight, said the general, we will hunt, you and I. Rainsford shook his head. No, General, he said. I will not hunt. The general shrugged his shoulders and delicately ate a hothouse grape. As you wish, my friend, he said. The choice rests entirely with you, but may I not venture to suggest that you will find my idea of sport more diverting than Ivan's? He nodded toward the corner to where the giant stood, scowling, his thick arms crossed on his hogshead of a chest. You don't mean, cried Rainsford. Oh, my dear fellow, said the general. Have I not told you? I always mean what I say about hunting. This is really an inspiration. I drink to a foeman worthy of my steel at last. The general raised his glass, but Rainsford sat staring at him. You'll find this game worth playing, the general said enthusiastically. Your brain against mine. Your witchcraft against mine. Your strength and stamina against mine. Outdoor chess. And the stake is not without value, eh? And if I win, began Rainsford huskily, I'll cheerfully acknowledge myself defeated if I do not find you by midnight of the third day, said General Zaroff. My sloop will place you on the mainland near town. The general read what Rainsford was thinking. Oh, you can trust me. I will give you my word as a gentleman and a sportsman. Of course, you, in turn, must agree to say nothing of your visit here. I'll agree to nothing of the kind, said Rainsford. Oh, said the general. In that case. But why discuss this now? 3 days hence we can discuss it over a bottle of drink, unless... The general sipped his wine. Then a businesslike air animated him. Ivan, he said to Rainsford, will supply you with hunting clothes, food, a knife. I suggest you wear moccasins. They leave a poorer trail. I suggest, too, that you avoid the big swamp. There's quicksand there. One foolish fellow tried it. The deplorable part of this was that Lazarus followed him. You can imagine my feelings, Mr. Rainsford. I loved Lazarus. He was the finest hound in my pack. Well, I must beg you to excuse me now. I always take a siesta after lunch. You'll hardly have time for a nap, I fear. You want to start, no doubt. I shall not follow till dusk. Hunting at night is so much more exciting than by day, don't you think? Au revoir, Mr. Rainsford. Au revoir. General Zaroff, with a deep, courtly bow, strolled from the room. From another drawer came Ivan. Under one arm he carried khaki hunting clothes, a haversack of food, a leather sheath containing a long-bladed hunting knife. His right hand rested on a cocked revolver, thrust in the crimson sash about his waist. Rainsford had fought his way through the bush for 2 hours. I must keep my nerve. I must keep my nerve, he said through tight teeth. He had not been entirely clear-headed when the chateau gate snapped shut behind him. His whole idea at first was to put distance between himself and the General Zaroff, and to this end he had plunged along, spurred on by the sharp rowels of something very like panic. Now he had to get a grip of himself, had stopped, and was taking stock of himself in the situation. He saw that straight flight was futile. Inevitably, it would bring him face to face with the sea. He was in a picture with a frame of water, and his operations clearly must take place within that frame. I'll give him a trail to follow, muttered Rainsford as he struck off from the rude path he had been following into the trackless wilderness. He executed a series of intricate loops. He doubled on his trail again and again, recalling all the lore of the fox hunt and all the dodges of the fox. Night found him, leg-weary, with hands and face lashed by the branches, on a thickly wooded ridge. He knew it would be insane to blunder on through the dark, even if he had the strength. His need for rest was imperative, and he thought, I have played the fox, now I must play the cat of the fable. A big tree with a thick trunk and outspread branches was nearby, and taking care to not leave the slightest mark, he climbed up into the crotch, and stretching out on one of the broad limbs after a fashion, rested. Rest brought him new confidence and almost a feeling of security. Even so, as zealous as a hunter as General Zaroff could not trace him there, he told himself only the devil himself could follow that complicated trail through the jungle after dark. But perhaps the general was a devil. An apprehensive night crawled slowly by like a wounded snake, and his sleep did not visit Rainsford, although the silence of a dead world was on the jungle. Toward morning, when a dingy gray was varnishing the sky, the cry of some startled bird focused Rainsford's attention in that direction. Something was coming through the bush, coming slowly, carefully, coming by the same winding way Rainsford had come. He flattened himself down on the limb, and through a screen of leaves, almost as thick as tapestry, he watched. The thing that was approaching was a man. It was General Zaroff. He made his way along with eyes fixed in utmost concentration on the ground before him. He paused almost beneath the tree, dropped to his knees, and studied the ground. Rainsford's impulse was to hurl himself down like a panther, but He saw that the general's right hand held something metallic, a small automatic pistol. The hunter shook his head several times, as if he were puzzled. Then he straightened up and took from his case one of his black cigarettes. Its pungent, incense-like smoke floated up to Rainsford's nostrils. Rainsford held his breath. The general's eyes had left the ground and were traveling inch by inch up the tree. Rainsford froze there. Every muscle tensed for a spring. But the sharp eyes of the hunter stopped before they reached the limb where Rainsford lay. A smile spread over his brown face. Very deliberately, he blew a smoke ring into the air, and then he turned his back on the tree and walked carelessly away, back along the trail he had come. The swish of the underbrush against his hunting boots grew fainter and fainter. The pent-up air burst hotly from Rainsford's lungs. His first thought made him feel sick and numb. The general could follow a trail through the woods at night. He could follow an extremely difficult trail. He must have uncanny powers. Only by the merest chance had the Cossack failed to see his quarry. Rainsford's second thought was even more terrible. It sent a shudder of cold horror through his whole being. Why had the general smiled? Why had he turned back? Rainsford did not want to believe what his reason told him was true, but the truth was evident as the sun that had by now pushed through the morning mists. The general was playing with him. The general was saving him for another day's sport. The Cossack was the cat. He was the mouse. Then it was that Rainsford knew the full meaning of terror. I will not lose my nerve. I will not. He slid down from the tree and struck off again into the woods. His face was set, and he forced the machinery of his mind to function. 300 yards from his hiding place, he stopped where a huge dead tree leaned precariously on a smaller living one. Throwing off his sack of food, Rainsford took his knife from its sheath and began to work with all his energy. The job was finished, at last, and he threw himself down behind a fallen log 100 feet away. He did not have to wait long. The cat was coming again to play with the mouse. Following the trail with the sureness of a bloodhound came General Zaroff. Nothing escaped those searching black eyes. No crushed blade of grass, no bent twig, no mark, no matter how faint, in the moss. So intent was he on his stalking that he was upon the thing Rainsford had made before he saw it. His foot touched the protruding bough that was the trigger. Even as he touched it, the general sensed his danger and leaped back with the agility of an ape, but he was not quite quick enough. The dead tree, delicately adjusted to rest on the cut living one, crashed down and struck the general a glancing blow on the shoulder as it fell, but for his alertness, he must have been smashed beneath it. He staggered, but he did not fall, nor did he drop his revolver. He stood there, rubbing his injured shoulder, and Rainsford, with fear again gripping his heart, heard the general's mocking laugh ring throughout the jungle. "Rainsford," called the general, "if you are within sound of my voice, as I suppose you are, let me congratulate you. Not many men know how to make a melee man-catcher. Luckily for me, I, too, have hunted there. You are proving interesting, Mr. Rainsford. I am going now to have my wound dressed. It's only a slight one, but I shall be back. I shall be back." When the general, nursing his bruised shoulder, had gone, Rainsford took up his flight again. It was flight now, a desperate, hopeless flight that carried him on for some hours. Dusk came, then darkness, and still he pressed on. The ground grew softer under his moccasins. The vegetation grew ranker, denser. Insects bit him savagely. Then, as he stepped forward, his foot sank into the ooze. He tried to retch it back, but the muck sucked viciously at his foot as if it were a giant leech. With violent effort, he tore his feet loose. He knew where he was now. Death Swamp and its quicksand. His hands were tight closed as if his nerves were something tangible that someone in the darkness was trying to tear from his grip. The softness of the earth had given him an idea. He stepped back from the quicksand a dozen feet or so, and, like some huge prehistoric beaver, he began to dig. Rainsford had dug himself in France when a second's delay meant death. That had been a placid pastime compared to his digging now. The pit grew deeper. When it was above his shoulders, he climbed out and from some hard saplings cut stakes and sharpened them to a fine point. These stakes he planted in the bottom of the pit, with the sticks pointed up. With flying fingers, he wove a rough carpet of weeds and branches, and with it he covered the mouth of the pit. Then, wet with sweat and aching with tiredness, he crouched behind the stump of a lightning-charred tree. He knew his pursuer was coming. He heard the padding sound of feet on the soft earth, and the night breeze brought him the perfume of the general's cigarette. It seemed to Rainsford that the general was coming with unusual swiftness. He was not feeling his way along, foot by foot. Rainsford, crouching there, could not see the general, nor could he see the pit. He lived a year in a minute. Then he felt an impulse to cry aloud with joy, for he heard the sharp crackle of the breaking branches as the cover of the pit gave way. He heard the sharp scream of pain as the pointed stakes found their mark. He leaped up from his place of concealment. Then he cowered back. 3 feet from the pit, a man was standing with an electric torch in his hand. "You've done well, Rainsford," the voice of the general called. "Your Burmese tiger pit has claimed one of my best dogs. Again, your score. I think, Mr. Rainsford, I'll see what you can do against my whole pack. I'm going home for a rest now. Thank you for a most amusing evening." At daybreak, Rainsford, lying near the swamp, was awakened by a sound that made him know that he had new things to learn about fear. It was a distant sound, faint and wavering, but he knew it. It was the baying pack of hounds. Rainsford knew he could do one of 2 things. He could stay where he was and wait. That was suicide. He could flee. That was postponing the inevitable. For a moment he stood there, thinking. An idea that held a wild chance came to him, and tightening his belt, he headed away from the swamp. The baying of the hounds drew nearer, then still nearer, nearer, ever nearer. On a ridge, Rainsford climbed a tree. Down a watercourse, not a quarter of a mile away, he could see the bush moving. Straining his eyes, he saw the lean figure of General Zaroff. Just ahead of him, Rainsford made out another figure, whose wide shoulders surged through the tall jungle weeds. It was the giant Ivan, and he seemed pulled forward by some unseen force. Rainsford knew that Ivan must be holding the pack in leash. They would be on him any minute now. His mind worked frantically. He thought of a native trick he had learned in Uganda. He slid down the tree. He caught hold of a springy young sapling, and to it he fastened his hunting knife, with the blade pointing down the trail. With a bit of wild grapevine, he tied back the sapling. Then he ran for his life. The hounds raised their voices as they hit the fresh scent. Rainsford knew now how an animal at bay feels. He had to stop to get his breath. The baying of the hounds stopped abruptly, and Rainsford's heart stopped too. They must have reached the knife. He shinned excitedly up a tree and looked back. His pursuers had stopped, but the hope that was in Rainsford's brain when he climbed died, for he saw in the shallow valley that General Zaroff was still on his feet. But Ivan was not. The knife, driven by the recoil of the springing tree, had not wholly failed. Rainsford had hardly tumbled to the ground when the pack took up the cry again. "Nerve, nerve, nerve," he panted as he dashed along. A blue gap showed between the trees dead ahead. Ever nearer drew the hounds. Rainsford forced himself on toward that gap. He reached it. It was the shore of the sea. Across a cove, he could see the gloomy gray stone of the chateau. 20 feet below him, the sea rumbled and hissed. Rainsford hesitated. He heard the hounds. Then he leaped far out into the sea. When the general and his pack reached the place by the sea, he stopped. For some minutes he stood regarding the blue-green expanse of water. He shrugged his shoulders. Then he sat down, took a drink of brandy from a silver flask, lit a cigarette, and hummed a bit from Madame Butterfly. General Zaroff had an exceedingly good dinner in his great paneled dining hall that evening. With it, he had a bottle of Pol Roger and half a bottle of Chambertin. 2 slight annoyances kept him from perfect enjoyment. One was the thought that it would be difficult to replace Ivan. The other was that his quarry had escaped him. Of course, the American hadn't played the game, so thought the general as he tasted his after-dinner liqueur. In his library he read to soothe himself from the works of Marcus Aurelius. At 10 he went up to his bedroom. He was deliciously tired, he said to himself as he locked himself in. There was a little moonshine, so before turning on his light he went to the window and looked down at the courtyard. He could see the great hounds, and he called, "Better luck another time," to them. Then he switched on the light. A man, who had been hiding in the curtains of the bed, was standing there. "Rainsford!" screamed the general. "How in God's name did you get here?" "Swam," said Rainsford. "I found it quicker than walking through the jungle." The general sucked in a breath and smiled. "I congratulate you," he said. "You won the game." Rainsford did not smile. I am still a beast at bay, he said in a low, hoarse voice. Get ready, General Zaroff. The general made one of his deepest bows. I see, he said. Splendid. One of us is to furnish a repast for the hounds. The other would sleep in this very excellent bed. On guard, Rainsford. He had never slept in a better bed, Rainsford decided. The end. I like that story. It's fun. Ugh. God. Talking makes me so thirsty. Crushes what? Hello, hi. Sorry, my frame rate is disgusting, so I was just reading tonight. Did a couple reads. Did a couple of the just telling some stories. But yeah, so that was The Most Dangerous Game. Which is such a fun one. It's such a fun little thing. Thank you for the story, of course. Thank you for listening. I'm pulling out the classic short stories from like high school lit classes. Actually, I do think I read both of those in high school. Yeah, those are fun ones. But yeah, with that, those are the only two short stories I know. I hope I'll be able to actually like stream a game tomorrow. Hopefully. We'll see. Oh my god, the twerking ones. The twerking ones! You've been busy with all your emotes. I like it. I love it. I need to do that, man. I need to get on it. But yeah. Missed it. We watched... Oh, that's right! I forgot! I forgot that was tonight! Because we changed it! Because you were not feeling well. By the way, how are you feeling? How's your daughter? How's she feeling? How's everybody feeling? I hope everyone's doing well. Oop. Oh my god, no, I don't want a goal. Nope, go away. That's Rain Ninja twerking. I love that. Rain Ninja should always be twerking. ABT, always be twerking. That's what I say every day. You know it. She's fine now. She's great. I'm okay. Stitches are healing. Oof. Oh, did you get dissolvable stitches? Because that's so much better. I hate stitches. I'm glad she's better though. That's good. That sounded scary. So crazy. My daughter in the ER. Then a day later, I'm in the same ER after getting cut. Like WTF. Yeah. Look, sometimes life just wants to be a dick. like, it's why there's like, when it rains, it pours. It's just like, yeah, sometimes it's just that it's a whole pour of suck. Like, there's nothing good in there. It's just a whole lot bad that you don't want. But then, you know, eventually you get through it and then it's all good. I'm gonna raid Justin, because I think Justin just started doing Mountain Blade 2. I don't know what that is, but unfortunately I didn't. I'm scared to go back and get them out. Oh no. But you did say that they were in your arm, which that's not as bad of a spot. I had surgery on my foot multiple times. Actually 3 times, all on my left foot. My left foot just needs to be thrown out. So the big stitches were 14 stitches on top. That was the hard one. It was literally like on the top of my foot, like from my big toe toward my ankle. That hurt. That was 14 stitches that had to, you know, be pulled out. But honestly, you know, breathing exercises and try to think of something else really makes a massive difference. But I mean, on your arm, that's not going to be that bad. Like, you'll probably be fine. But yeah, thank you everyone for hanging out with Storytime. Thank you for the resubs and the gifted subs. That was really awesome. When I saw that the frames were just not with it tonight, I really thought that it was just gonna be it. But you guys still hung out anyway. I love you guys. You're so sweet. Hopefully this week I can do Mass Effect. But we're rating. We're rating out. I love you all. I'll see you all soon. Have a good night. Let's go say hi.